In an emergency, every heartbeat is precious because lives can quickly slip away in measured moments. I'm William Shatner. Tonight, true stories of unforeseen dangers and people who never stop caring on Rescue 911. We begin in a residential neighborhood on the outskirts of Louisville, Kentucky, shortly before 31-year-old Jackie Wilson and her husband Dusty were expecting the birth of their third child.
What boat are you sailing on?
I'm working across on a cattle boat.
A cattle boat?
Okay, I like cars.
It was late on November 4th, about 12:30 that morning. My wife had just gone to bed and I was flipping through the channels. Didn't feel much like going to sleep, and all of a sudden my wife came down the hall and complaining that she couldn't sleep either.
Dusty, honey,
Yeah.
I don't feel very well.
We'd had a long day, long night, and of course she was 9 months pregnant and feeling that exhaustion as well.
I could pass out.
It's been a long day. Maybe you're just tired.
They were planning on inducing labor the next day.
Like this.
Oh,
You don't think it's the baby?
no, it's just my heart. You feel that?
She sat on the couch with me and she began to feel faint.
We better call the doctor.
All right.
Around 12:35 a.m., Dusty Wilson placed a call to their obstetrician, Dr. Catherine Kashner.
Dusty said that she's really tired and weak and feels like she's going to pass out, and he said he could see her heart beating in her chest.
It's pounding really hard.
And I said, Dusty, if you think it's important enough to wake me at this hour, then I think it's important enough that you bring her in and we check her out.
Watch your head.
At 12:55 a.m., Dusty and Jackie headed to the hospital 11 miles away, leaving their pastor's wife to watch their two sons at home.
I had no idea to think that anything serious was going to happen. I just knew that Jackie was feeling exhausted and she was feeling stressed. I proceeded down the road and Jackie said she was cold, so I turned the heater on. A few seconds later she said, well, I'm hot, so then I turned it off. And I started getting scared. The only thing that I was thinking about was get there, and I was just hoping that nothing worse was going to happen. And then the next thing I knew, I heard her gasping for air, and I turned and looked, and she was having a seizure in the car.
Jackie, what's the matter, Jackie? Jackie?
And she was looking at me as if, please help me. And there wasn't anything at all that I could do. Just a few short seconds later, I looked and she had slumped over in the seat and there was no breath. And so I grabbed for her pulse and there was no pulse, there was no heartbeat. And I knew then that she was dead in the car.
We need you, hold on, please.
And I thought, I'm not going to get there if I keep stopping at these lights. So I just started hollering her name and telling her not to leave me and the boys, that we couldn't make it without her.
Really? This okay? You put it back.
Shortly after 1 a.m., Dr. Eddie Hooker finished his shift in the emergency room at Humana Audubon Hospital and was about to go home.
So you were trying to hold on.
I was sitting there talking with the ambulance crew when a car came flying up the ramp, honking its horn and flashing its lights. As I opened the door and I see this, what appeared to be was a healthy female, now in cardiac arrest, I didn't know what had happened.
Code 300!
Initially, you kind of go into autopilot. You know that you've got a lady here that's dead unless you do something.
Need X-ray, EKG! Now, come on, guys!
You have only about 4 minutes to save their life. And I didn't know how long she'd already been in cardiac arrest. So I wasn't even sure if we could save her, but I knew that if we didn't act quickly, she was dead. And so was this baby.
When we continue.
In my 18 years of nursing, I've never dealt with an experience quite like this one was, that we had two lives at stake instead of just one.
As Dusty Wilson was rushing his pregnant wife Jackie to the hospital, she suddenly collapsed in the car. By the time Jackie arrived at the emergency room under the care of Dr. Eddie Hooker, she was no longer breathing, and her heart had stopped beating.
Stop breathing. Start bagging her. Let's get CPR started.
Let's get her on the monitor.
Come on, guys. Get her on the monitor for me.
When we put her on the monitor, we found she was in ventricular fibrillation, which is basically a rhythm where the heart just quivers and is not pumping any blood.
Yeah, let's everybody
We
clear.
immediately defibrillated her.
Clear.
Emergency nurse Edie Harper knew the odds were not good.
In my 18 years of nursing, I've never dealt with an experience quite like this one was, that we had 2 lives at stake instead of just one, and not knowing at that point whether the baby was alive or whether the baby was dead or whether we'd be able to bring Ms. Wilson back to life.
Okay.
There was a very lonely feeling in that waiting room. Nobody had said anything, but I knew that I'd lost my wife. I just knew inside that I wasn't going to see her alive again.
Okay, guys. Got the atropine on board. Wait a second. I think we got a pulse. Stop CPR.
We got a pulse back. We started getting her heart speeding up a little bit, but then it subsequently stopped.
She's back in V-fib, guys.
I was beginning to start losing hope that we would ever get her back. I was even starting to think about actually taking the baby at that point, but we don't like to do C-sections in emergency rooms, but occasionally when the mother is just not savable, we'll actually just cut the mother open in the emergency room and get the baby out. The second time, she came back at a real fast heartbeat, about 220 times a minute.
Jackie,
Squeeze my hand,
Jackie,
Jackie.
try to
Squeeze
squeeze
my
Edie's hand.
She's moving her fingers.
She's got a good
not
pulse.
really squeezing. She's blinking her eyes.
Okay, Jack. Okay, Jack.
She is?
Hey, now let's need some Valium in the room, please, guys.
Hold on.
Jackie, calm down. She's having a seizure. Oh, that's good. Oh, she's throwing a lot of Ectopy. Let's increase the lidocaine drip.
So we gave her some muscle relaxer, and after she received that, she relaxed, but then her heart stopped again.
We're back in V-fib.
Let's go.
Guys.
Everybody clear. Everybody
All
clear.
After the third defibrillation, her heart came back into a real good normal rhythm.
We got a rate of 120. All right, guys. Come on. Let's get a blood pressure.
At this point, we're getting excited. We're starting to get a blood pressure, and the OB nurses have come in at this point. And I said, I want to know, do we have a baby? And is there baby heart tones down there? Can we hear a baby?
Induced Monday. All right, we got one. All right.
Around 1:15 a.m., they located the baby's heartbeat. Soon after, Jackie's obstetrician, Dr. Kashner, got to the hospital.
I arrived at the emergency room, and Eddie Hooker proceeded to give me a capsule summary of what had gone on. We made the decision at that point that she was stable, so we decided the best thing to do would be deliver this term baby.
Now.
Jackie, can you hear me? Shake your head yes if you can hear me, sweetie.
It's Dr. Kashner's here, Jackie.
Okay. It's her husband.
He's out in the waiting room. You want to talk to him?
Let's go. Can you leave?
Is she all right?
Dusty?
We explained that Jackie was doing okay, that things had been real bad.
Okay, right now.
I was still scared that we'd lose her. Something bad was going to happen, and so I didn't want something to happen, and then he didn't get to see her at all.
She can't talk.
And at that point, he said, well, if it's a decision between Jackie and the baby, he would rather lose the baby than lose Jackie.
Okay.
And he asked if he could see her, and we said yes, but she would not be able to talk with him.
Okay. Now she's right over this way.
They said in order for them to continue to help my wife that they had to take the baby. That was another pressure point right there because we both wanted a baby. But it's hard to feel like in the back of your mind that you may lose the life of a little one to gain the life of your wife.
Jackie? Jackie, it's Dusty, honey. Can you hear me? Squeeze my hand.
She squeezed my hand and I said, do you know I love you? And she squeezed my hand again.
Dusty, we need to take her upstairs now, okay? We'll come and talk to you just as soon as we have something to say.
Then they led me out of the room and went ahead and took her up to the operating room.
I'll talk to you, okay?
Do we have an elevator ready?
What's
Call
going on?
security, please.
At that point, I started trying to go through all the lab work, EKGs, and chest x-rays and things that we had done to try to see if we could figure out why in the heck she went into this rhythm.
She's got WPW.
Yep.
Delta waves and everything.
And all of a sudden, I look at the heart tracing that I did, and I find the diagnosis. It's sitting right there on the paper. She has a condition called WPW, or Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome. And her heart basically has an extra wire. And when it short circuits, the electricity doesn't work right, and the heart just basically stops beating.
There's always risk to undergoing surgery, but we felt that Jackie's risk was not significantly greater at this time than if nothing had happened.
Jackie Wilson underwent a cesarean section. At 2:03 a.m., she gave birth to a healthy baby girl, Morgan Ann Marie. 1 week later, doctors performed open-heart surgery on Jackie to correct her rare heart disorder.
The staff at Audubon Hospital, words can't begin to describe how we feel about them. They cried with us. They hurt when we hurt. And they were more than just a doctor and patient relationship, I felt.
I don't think as long as I do emergency medicine, I'll have a case that will reward me as much. And I don't think people that aren't doctors will ever have anything in their life that'll reward them as much as this case rewarded me.
We've had 2 boys, but that girl's been missing.
Come on, Lord.
So now we've got a baby girl, and our family's complete.
My life's been changed a lot through this, that you don't take life for granted. Each day I try to live it to the fullest. We've been given each other, we've been given a second chance at life, and that's something that money can't buy.